This week on The Other Side, a very special episode. Our governments have gone mad with their attacks on free speech. Almost nobody's paying attention, and our main opposition party isn't fighting back anywhere near hard enough. The Other Side and all independent media are facing an existential threat. This is a very special episode of The Other Side in which I'll be joined by a panel of three wise men, a boomer, a Gen Xer and a millennial, all established leaders in their fields and deep thinkers. We've got to talk because things are getting very serious. We'll unpack Albo's disgraceful Misinformation Laws 2.0. We'll unpack dreadful laws just rammed through the Queensland Parliament by the Labor government in its last moments. And we'll uncover the woeful state of the Liberal Party in Victoria and its handling of the important issues within its senior ranks. And we'll tell you why we think the Labor Party can win the unwinnable election in Queensland. It's a big one. This is The Other Side. G'day Sydney, g'day Perth and g'day Australia. This is episode 329 of The Other Side for the weekend commencing Friday, September 20, 2024. Our last show for this season, a short 1 week spring break we're taking next week, but we're back right after on Friday, October 4, and we'll be seeing out the rest of the year with you from then. I'm Damiann. The Other Side is your weekly analysis of the best news and commentary to get you smart for the weekend and the week ahead without the woke. With a new show dropping on YouTube every Friday night at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. Our bias, we declare it right up front, unlike that billion-dollar black hole of taxpayer money wasted on left-wing drivel we call the ABC. Our bias here, or leaning, our perspective on the news is centre-right. Good old-fashioned everyday common sense Aussie values. And we pay our own way with your voluntary support. We have another bias, and that is towards facts and data and a funny little thing we used to call the truth in journalism. Let's go. Well, we are in big trouble, folks. This could be the end of the road for The Other Side and a lot of other independent media in Australia too. And some people say it could be the end of the road for free speech and democracy all up. The Albanese Labor government's new MAD laws, the misinformation and disinformation laws, they will see us shut down. Not for anything we've said, or we might say, just for what we could say in the future. Kind of like a Tom Cruise pre-crime, if you like.
I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks. Give the man his hand.
The future can be seen.
You're arresting individuals who have broken no law.
But they will.
The fact that you prevent it from happening doesn't change the fact that it was going to happen.
The system can't be wrong.
No, Minority Report. The system can't be wrong. Your channel's being shut down, Mr. Curry. Sorry, but we at YouTube can't put ourselves at risk of massive fines from your tiny little nation at the bottom of the earth, so no political content or commentary is allowed on YouTube anymore. See ya. Now that would be awful for us and for the good people like you who watch this show, because you realise the mainstream media, the ABC and our major political parties are feeding you on a steady diet of PR bulldust. But it's a very, very good outcome for the establishment. And it's exactly what they want and why they are doing this. It's good for the Labor Green Party and it's good for the Liberal National Party. It's very, very bad for all the minority parties and independents on the right and on the left. It's good for all the big mainstream old media companies, but it's very bad for independent media channels like us and anyone like you who wants to write or express themselves freely on social media. Which may explain why, even though this is the most illiberal, dangerous, free speech annihilating legislation to come before our parliament in decades, our mainstream media is hardly talking about it. And the Liberal Party opposition is so far opposing it with all the force of a wet blanket wrapped in a soggy lettuce leaf. The fight is on for our survival, folks. And it feels like we're on our own. It's David versus Goliath, and we are not Goliath in that little analogy. There's only one big guy in this fight that's on our side, and that's Elon Musk. He rightly labelled the government's proposal to fine social media companies 5% of their global revenue, which might be almost all of their global profits, in fact, He labelled that fascist. 5% of their global revenue. That's what Albo wants to fine social media companies that break his little law. You know, I love this country with all my heart, but I'm a humble guy and realistic. Who the hell does Albo think we are? Australia is not significant to these companies. We're tiny in the scheme of things. Elon has evil authoritarian socialists destroying Brazil to worry about. Fighting evil authoritarian socialists in Australia comes a distant second. Albo hit back, like Elon Musk would give a rat's, in an opinion editorial in the Murdoch newspapers. My message to Mr. Musk, I work for Aussies, not you. See the PR manipulation here, folks? Playing on your patriotism? Well, actually, you don't work for Aussies, Albo. You seem to be working only for Canberra and the bureaucrat class. You seem to be working to centralise power for your mates. Elon Musk seems to be the one working to defend Australians' freedom of expression. He's the one working for real Aussies. Albo then goes on to spew a whole load of Kamala nice words about protecting kids online, which nobody, of course, can disagree with, because he thinks we're so stupid that we're going to fall for that trick, muddying the waters with really nice stuff to sneak their clampdown on free speech through, disguised as keeping us safe, and even better, protecting the little children. It's so predictable and pathetic, but sadly, it'll probably work. You see, all this is happening because the establishment is angry at us. They're angry that they didn't get their racist clause in our constitution last year with the voice vote. They don't like that you were smart enough to see through their little trick and they couldn't use their corporate mates to brainwash you. They're scared they're going to one day have to hold an investigation into the appalling mismanagement of COVID and the destruction of hundreds of billions of dollars of our national wealth and small business, all for nothing. The destruction of your civil liberties and the denial of your right to freely enter and exit your own country and your states. They don't ever want to have to be accountable for those gigantic mistakes and crimes of 2020, 2022. They do not want a free and independent media at all, because they can't control it. This is great for Nine Media's TV and newspaper and radio station empire and the ABC and all the big newspapers, because they'll get their power back as the only media allowed to speak freely, because they will be exempted from these laws. So will academics, and so will most government officials. Surprise! It's going to be great. It'll be just like China. The out-of-touch Canberra bureaucrats who voted for the voice, 60-40, while the rest of the country voted against the voice, 40-60, will finally be able to make the rest of us do what we are told like we're supposed to. So this is why you won't be hearing much about this in the media, folks, except maybe polite discussions about the details of the new laws. The Shadow Communications Minister, David Coleman, appeared on Sky News' Sunday Agenda show, and he had this to say about the rehashed bill.
And then they've come out with a bill which has a lot of issues. Now, it hasn't been to our shadow cabinet yet, and we'll go through our normal processes, but there's a lot of problems with this bill.
A shadow minister is the opposition spokesperson on a particular thing. They're supposed to shadow the government minister and keep a close eye on them. And while in opposition, they are supposed to oppose most things, and at least put the opposing arguments. David Coleman is Peter Dutton's man on the front line of the Conservative fight against this horrible totalitarian law. Only he's nowhere near the front line. He's been all but invisible this week, except for that appearance on Sky. He talked a little bit tough, but he shouldn't even be entertaining this law or considering it in shadow cabinet. It needs to be taken to the dump and buried. I thought Albo was smart enough to bury it after its first version got absolutely hammered by every man and his dog months ago. But that was my mistake, thinking Albo was smart. Oh no, this is the man who brought you the voice. He loves flogging dead horses and very bad commie ideas, as Mr. Coleman told Sky News this week.
The Minister put this bill out in June last year. We had 4 months when pretty much everyone in Australia came out and said it was a grotesque piece of legislation, from the Civil Liberties Council to the Human Rights Commission to more than 20,000 ordinary Australians have put in submissions.
Could you see the crossbench supporting it? Because it sounds like you're not going to support it.
Well, look, I think if you look at the bill, I mean, so the minister's had 10 months and she comes out in section 68 of this bill with a power to personally order misinformation investigations.
What? I'm sorry, what did he just say? Could you please repeat that, Mr. Coleman?
For power to personally order public hearings into misinformation events. This is extraordinary in a democracy. I mean, in this bill, Andrew, if you're an academic, something you say basically can't be misinformation. But if you're an ordinary Australian who disagrees with an academic, it can be misinformation. And we in the coalition will always stand up for free speech. We did that last time. We fought this bill very hard. It had to be withdrawn. And we'll certainly fight hard for free speech this time as well.
So Communications Minister Michelle Rowland would personally have the power to decide what's misinformation and what isn't. Oh, well, this is such an improvement. Marvellous work, Michelle, Elbow, Tanya, Jim, the whole team over there at the People's Communist Party of Labor Australia. Excellent job. I've got to admit, I'm very, very troubled by Peter Dutton's authoritarian streak coming to the fore a bit here too. He likes surveillance and policing. He needs to slap this thing down hard to send a very clear message to the electorate that he will not tolerate or even entertain the slightest discussion of such mad misinformation and disinformation laws. And I'm very sad to say that we've not seen that from Peter Dutton yet. Dutton has in the past supported the e-safety commissioner, the age limits for teens on social media, all sorts of illiberal ideas that sound nice, but turn the government and the state more and more into our parents and guardians rather than our servants, meddling in stuff that parents should be sorting out for kids and adults sorting out for themselves. So I'm not feeling safe, guys. I need a safe space. I don't feel like the Liberal Party has got our back or your back one little bit, I'm afraid. And it brings me no joy to say that. We invited David Coleman on this show, but his advisor politely declined. This show has a big audience and it offers them the chance to speak at length. But no, they wanted to hold their fire. Well, that might be strategically wise. I don't know. I think this needs loud and clear, unequivocal stance based purely on the vibe of the thing. You don't need time to consider all the details. But maybe they want to use it as a weapon closer to the election, drag it out. That could be smart. Anyway, I don't know. It doesn't matter what they think, what I think rather, since this show won't exist if this law goes through. But we're not going down without a fight. Shadow Communications Minister David Coleman is a very nice man, I'm sure, and a smart one. He is the Federal Liberal Party member for the southwestern Sydney seat of Banks. That's a very unsafe seat for a Liberal member. It's a traditional Labor seat and it remains pretty marginal. So already Mr. Coleman has little incentive to be very much on the right on all this. He has an arts law degree from the University of New South Wales, a notoriously left-wing place. I know, I went there too. And he was the president of the student union. So I hope his union days have put a bit of fire in his belly and he knows how to fight. Because although it may suit the establishment folk for this bill to go through, the people of Australia are furious about it, and we intend making sure it is properly opposed while we still can. So we'll be keeping an eye on Mr. Coleman and Mr. Dutton and all the Liberal wet lefties in the party who might like government to have nanny state power, and all of the right-wingers in the party who get a bit too authoritarian at times and like the big surveillance state idea. We'll be watching you closely on this show. We have no choice. This bill is an existential threat to us. Private internet access is terrific. With all the big government clampdown on online speech lately, you are taking a big risk if you don't have a VPN. That's a virtual private network. And it blocks spying eyes in big government or big corporate from seeing your IP address and hacking into your data. Now, it's super easy and cheap to set it up. It's not technical. Even I could do it. And even if you already have a VPN, you should consider switching to these guys, because since I have had zero reduction in my internet speeds, which was a bit of a problem with the one I was using before. And I don't even have to think about this one. It's just on automatically whenever I turn on my computer. And even better news is that the other side has secured a special deal for you, which will get you set up for 83% off the usual price and with 4 months free. And get this, that brings the price down to less than $3 a month. It is absolutely amazing. So jump on it now, sign up to our special deal and help support us by supporting our sponsors. piavpn.com/otherside. piavpn.com/otherside. This show has a big audience on YouTube, but only a modest 27,000 followers on X. It's unusual for any of our tweets to receive more than a few dozen likes or retweets. But every now and again, something hits a public nerve and generates a huge, unexpected response. And this one shocked me. A post last Friday I made about the Albanese government's latest attempt to ram through its draconian MAD laws, the Misinformation and Disinformation Bill, got 77,000 views, 1,300 retweets and 4,100 likes in a matter of hours. Now, even among a right-wing leaning sample on a more politically engaged platform like X, that's a response that should alert any politician to a golden opportunity. What was even more telling was the nature of the response. I'd rhetorically asked, so where is Peter Dutton and the Liberal Party on all this? I never anticipated the veracity of your replies. A significant proportion of the comments were more critical of the opposition for not doing the job of opposing than they were of the government for bringing the stupid bill to Parliament in the first place. Bill of Rights Now said, this bill is now so toxic it'll destroy every politician that doesn't come out and totally condemn it. Quite simply, it's the worst piece of proposed legislation ever in Australian history. That any politician thinks it's okay to gag the majority of the population is utterly contemptuous. That they also think it's okay to exempt themselves and their mates is utterly despicable. The outrage at this is palpable, more than at any proposed legislation I've ever seen. This will end political careers and replace governments. Australians must stand up and be counted on this. We will not accept politicians who think it's okay to gag us while they continue with their lies. And Paul Cherry notes, when the government gets the power to decide what is truth and what to censor, that's the last government you'll ever have. And this from Sharon, there are many of us who have addressed Dutton directly asking for a clear statement in response to this bill. It's reminiscent of the E-Safety Commissioner saga. He waits and then delivers a response. It'll be interesting given his support of COVID vaccines, digital ID, E-Safety Commissioner and his 16-year-old threshold for social media accounts. Now this is a skewed sample, as the market research boffins would say, true. But the quantity and quality of this reaction to a tweet from a modest independent news commentary channel like ours is a red flag. It's also a flashing green light of opportunity. But they've got to get loud and strong on this. As I wrote in The Spectator this week, if the Liberal Party don't get very, very liberal about this very, very fast and fight hard, it could be the final nail in the coffin of what John Howard calls the broad church. Not because of fights that might happen inside the Liberal Party, but because the public have had enough of the uni party. The fact is that it looks more and more every day like our political elites are all stitched up together in one pro-big government, pro-bureaucratic control united lump. The Liberal Nationals and Labor Greens mega coalition of power-mad control freaks with little respect for freedom, all pretending to hate each other and pretending to give us choice. Like when my wife used to say to the kids, do you want to go to bed now or after you've brushed your teeth? The false perception of a choice. You may not have to brush your teeth, sure, but you're going to bed. Let's hope that idea is as ridiculous as it sounds. But in 2024, who knows? Joining me now in the studio, our panel of three wise men. Every so often on the show, I want us to do an episode where I'm not the only opinionated talking head you see in here. So we've brought the peanut gallery in, three gentlemen who have all been part of this show many times in the past. Representing the boomer generation, the man who got so sick of the unions shoveling resources off to the Labor Party and the left, he started his own unions to provide services to clients instead. Outrageous. The founder and leader of Red Unions Australia, Mr. GRAEME HAYCROFT. Representing the meat in the generational sandwich, Generation X. He's been a cop, he's been a financial auditor, he runs a law firm, he's a detective of lies and deception, a deep thinker and philosopher, and a man whose attention to detail is so extreme that for him, the glass is never half empty, but always 51.6387942% full. Mr. Scott PELTO. And representing the generation that thinks poverty is not being able to buy a 5-bedroom mansion on your first pay packet, and without having to go to cafe brunches for a week, the millennial with a bigger brain than most, musician, social businessman, small businessman, and a guy who prefers natural law to laws made up by public servants and cat ladies. Mr. Rob McMULLAN. Welcome, mate. Age before beauty, so First of all, to you, Mr. Haycroft, what are your thoughts on the misinformation laws?
Well, I was fascinated by the good shadow minister. He said, I just wrote down, this legislation has got a lot of problems. No, it doesn't have a lot of problems. It has one problem. The definition of it, upon which it's based, is that disinformation will be defined by a bureaucrat. That's the only problem it's got. Who should be defining it are the people. We should be the ones who are defining whether what we're hearing, what we're seeing is disinformation or not, because we're rational, sensible people. We go and make our own inquiries and we get lots of other alternate opinion like we do now. So this is going to close it down. So in terms of debate theory, which I think is fascinating, if you want to win a debate and you're arguing against an opponent, what you try and do is introduce a false assumption and get them to accept it. The false assumption in this case is that someone other than the people can make a determination of what is disinformation. That's patently false. Yeah. And yet the LNP have accepted this, and we heard this from the good shadow minister, Mr. Coleman. There are lots of problems. No, there's just one, as I said at the beginning.
Yeah, got to get rid of it. Scott, what do you reckon?
Damiann, I think it's a fundamental assault on democracy, honestly. And I say that because it's all about attacking free speech. And when it comes to democratic values, free speech is probably the central pillar. I don't think there's anything more important to maintain a democratic free society than allowing free speech. I'd go so far as to say that you could hear the most distasteful things possible. You could have Beelzebub, the devil himself, get up on a soapbox and make his case. This is a requirement of free speech, and it's up to individuals to discern whether they want to listen to it or not, whether they want to contemplate it and consider it or not. Yeah. But it's not for somebody else to say what can go in someone's ears, and to the point, this forms part of a course of conduct. There's been an attack on what we must say, like in identity and pronouns. Well, I say nobody gets control of my tongue. No. Nobody's going to tell me what to say.
Good on you. Rob, what do you reckon?
Except your wife, of course.
Of course.
The first thing that came to my
mind...
Such
a boomer joke. But anyway, sorry, lady.
Us sexist would say.
First thing that came to my mind was we need to check to see if there's a provision, an exemption for welcome to countries, because, in case you didn't know, apparently they're 250,000 years old now, despite some scientists actually saying that modern humans evolved around 200,000 years ago. But look, free speech assumes people are responsible adults, and so being on the right, often we want people to be responsible and grow up into responsible adults. The left, however, seems to be banking on this strategy of infantilization. It's almost like a civilizational Munchausen by proxy.
You'll have to explain that. Munchausen by proxy.
Oh, it's a pretty dark concept, to be honest.
Okay. Let's not get into it then. Just look it up on Google.
It's infantilizing and damaging your own children for the sake of your own popularity and status and resources. And it And it seems that the left-wing governments in this country want to do that to the population. Instead of encouraging them to grow up and be able to debate and hear things they might not like, that's prompting a cognitive maturation. In a sense, they want to infantilize people and keep them safe for their own fun and profit.
Yeah, seems to be sinister, but not without probability in this case. I mean, I often find myself wondering, what the hell's going on here? I mean, you wake up every day and it's like another ridiculous thing these days where you think, nobody wants this, right? It's clear nobody wants this. Okay, so why isn't the opposition speaking out? Why is the government even bothering to bring it? Why didn't they shelve? Why did they bring this misinformation law back? Graham?
Because...
You got an answer for that?
Oh, shit, yeah. You have to understand that the Labor Party politicians and the left are very serious about it, and they planned it through, and they've worked out that the LNP won't oppose anything, right? right? So the LNP put in, they're like garters in charge of the lettuce patch.
But the public will. Like, don't they know that these laws are ridiculous? I mean, nobody wants them.
But they don't know how to argue, and they don't know how to fight. And one of the reasons they do this stuff is that the Labor Party knows that the LNP won't know what to do. And the classic example, Coleman. I mean, God, they must be shivering in their boots. Being attacked by him is like being attacked by mauled by a dead sheep. I mean, really. So
he'll never come on the show now, Graham. That's done it.
They have no idea. No one in the LNP can see the simplicity of this. Right? As you were saying, it's just an outright attack on freedom of speech, but it can be argued down on its basic premise. Where are they? Why aren't they coming out to do it?
Yeah.
And the reason it's been introduced is because the Labor Party know that they won't, and what that does is that alienates the right wing of the LNP support. They go, oh, they're hopeless, And so they vote for One Nation and Catter up north and the parties out to the right. And that effectively significantly harms the Conservative cause. Not to say that those minor parties aren't conservative, but in terms of money, so you don't get any money for second preference. It's only the
that's
vote,
right. And they do get money. They get like $3 or $4 per vote, right?
Yeah, and the LNP politicians are all innumerate.
All right. Any final comments, guys? No? Okay, we'll carry on because I do want to get to a lot of other topics. But we have to have a quick message for our sponsors. Then we're going to come back and we'll be discussing with the three wise men something even worse, if you could believe it. If you thought the misinformation and disinformation laws from the feds were bad, we've got some fantastic stuff coming up from the state governments. Truly terrifying. Stay with us. Did you know that for every 2 to 3 teachers in Australia working hard in classrooms across the country, there is one taxpayer-funded bureaucrat sitting behind a desk doing admin and making and enforcing rules and regulations that make those teachers' jobs even harder? That's right, one bureaucrat for every 2 to 3 frontline teachers. That's how bloated our public service has become. But you'll never hear about it from the regular teachers' unions because they also represent many of those public servants. So says the leading alternative teachers' union in Australia, the TPAA. If you're a teacher, it's time to change to a union that will not only look after you without using your money to support the Labor Party, but which is taking on the government education system to sidestep those bureaucrats and use the savings to pay all teachers 25% more. The current waste must stop. All the red tape doesn't just suck up resources and time, it actually takes the teachers away from teaching our kids and it wastes their time filling in crazy paperwork for meddling bureaucrats. So join the union that will actually stand up against big bloated government. Join the TPAA, the Teachers Professional Association of Australia. To find out more, just Google TPAA. The TPAA's fees are half the price because none of your money goes to any political party. And as an Other Side viewer, if you use our special code OTHERSIDE1 when you sign up, you'll get a further $100 off your first year's fees as a rebate on your first payments. Go to tpaa.redunion.com.au, tpaa.redunion.com.au to sign up now for a better union and support the Other Side too by supporting our sponsors. Thank you, teachers, you legends. The Queensland Government passed new laws this week to protect workers from discrimination, vilification, sexual harassment, victimisation and other unlawful behaviours. Sounds great, as all these keeping us safe laws do. The Queensland Labor State Government under Stephen Miles says the new Respect at Work laws will protect workers against sexual discrimination and harassment and challenge attitudes that lead to domestic and family violence. What nebulous waffle. Firstly, what sort of sex discrimination are they talking about? Do they support biological women over non-biological trans men who want to be considered women? We've seen how dangerous all that is in the federal courts with the Giggle versus Tickle case. The retailers seem happy about these laws, by the way. The fashion industry news site Rag Trader reports on the laws positively. The Australian Retailers Association and National Retail Association have both welcomed the Respect at Work laws, but they said more needs to be done. ARA CEO Paul Zara said the industry would like to see specific penalties for people who are abusive or aggressive towards retail workers. Right, so complain about bad service a little too loudly and you're off to jail. Be nice or else. The laws include an aggravating sentencing factor. So if you're an adult offender and you've acted violently or caused physical harm to a person in their workplace, you'll get extra time for the crime. New South Wales, South Australia and WA already have those laws in place. The new laws also include a positive duty on employers, because employers aren't already drowning in duties, to take reasonable and proportionate measures to eliminate discrimination, sexual harassment and other unlawful conduct under the Anti-Discrimination Act 1991. And the time limit for making a complaint to the Queensland Human Rights Commission about matters of harassment and discrimination will be extended from 1 year to 2 years. Fantastic stuff. More government intervention to keep us safe and well. We might start with you this time, Rob. I mean, what do you make of this wonderful new Queensland law?
Well, I think it's great that as a straight white male, I finally have some recourse for discrimination.
How so? How so?
Against quotas, or maybe the Christians can, anti-Christian sentiment can take the... No, look, it's just another... you have to hand it to the left. They're always very prepared to use the law to rule.
Yeah.
To always go on the offensive with their ideological agenda. We're always trying to, stay neutral, and the institutions and the law should be neutral, but the left are always trying to push their ideologies onto people, and unfortunately they're, slowly getting away with it.
They're pretty dumb though, because as you point out, this can all work the other way around.
It can, but once again, isn't there this subjectivity that underlies it? There has to be some sort of decidability where someone goes, that doesn't qualify as misinformation or harassment. If you call someone, discriminated with a hiring quota against straight white males or something like that.
Yeah. So basically, Scott, I guess what Rob's saying is that it puts it in the hands of a bureaucrat to do the deciding of what is or isn't hate speech or vilification.
Yeah, which is, as you know, very dangerous, Damiann. Just the terms misinformation and disinformation, like you follow that through to its logical conclusion, it means that there's information. If it's mis or dis, does that mean somebody else has to verify whether it's misinformation or disinformation?
And in the case of this sort of vilification law, it's even worse, right? Because what is hate speech? How do you define hate speech, Graeme?
Well, you can't. It's a totally subjective view. What may be hate speech to someone is love speech to another.
Yep.
Don't ask me for an exact example of that, but you get the general point. It's a subjective definition. But overall, this legislation really will have zero impact in the workplace. It's just a piece of bullshit stuff that comes through. It's in the same line, creates a whole new set of raft of the bits and pieces, the disgruntled bullying employees, and we have some of those, who can then another excuse to attack the employers. And of course, the old-fashioned thinking in the labour movement was that by doing this, you then are able to go in there and negotiate and get more union membership. But I don't think any of that's going to happen. This was entirely political. Look at the timing of this. There's an election coming up in a month's time.
Mm.
So this is...
Well, it was the last sitting of Parliament, and they rammed it through in like the 11th hour. Yeah. The final thing that they put through, and it's this far-reaching, scary stuff.
Well, the LNP won't have, and they've done it because they predict correctly that the LNP won't have any idea how to handle it.
Right.
They will have said absolutely nothing about this other than, oh dear, it's dreadful, it's dreadful, it's dreadful.
Well, no, they haven't. I don't know that the opposition has said that. I haven't heard anything from David Christopher, and we're sitting here. We're coming to you from Queensland at the moment. So I don't know any. When we shouldn't be able to miss it, really. If it's an election time, we should be hearing loud and clear.
It sounds scary. Yeah, it sounds scary, but it won't work in the workplace. But it reminds all of the people that are on the right side of the Conservative movement. Don't have any time for these people because they won't fight for you on anything. So that was one of its reasons.
So the emeritus professor, Gabriel Moens of the University of Queensland Law School, a very, very dignified guy, and he's been a smart man, and he wrote in the Spectator that this bill, which is called the Respect at Work and Other Matters, I love that, and Other Matters, Amendment Bill 2024, was rammed through Parliament in the 11th hour of the final sitting. He says that in effect, the effect, if not the intention of the legislation, is to stifle the freedom of expression of Queenslanders. He says it's an example of the type of social engineering legislation that Labor is keen to adopt. It's based on Labor's secular anti-discrimination ideology, a cultural belief that justifies and even requires the adoption of social arrangements that often abrogate the rights of people. And again, this is important to everybody in Australia because these laws exist in all states around our country. Rob?
The funny thing with a lot of these things is what the left does is they play frame games, they're linguistic games. So one of the disadvantages of conservative people is we're more productive. You know, we work in systems, and we've talked about this sort of stuff before. The left works in the social arena. And so they split hairs, they do little framing games. And so one example of that would be if you said that, you know, someone has male privilege or white privilege, you know, that is, or, you know, even calling someone racist when they're actually not, you know, that is it's an attack, it's a social status attack, but it's disguised, it's framed as some sort of, you know, intellectual critique, where it's actually pseudo-intellectual, but that's the way they navigate these things. And so because...
Jeez, it's dark, isn't it?
It's dark, it's diabolical, but, you know, the right tends to be more productive, and so we're a bit more blind to these little social status framing, linguistic conflation games.
Right, so this is a skill that the left have got because they're very communal, social...
They navigate a social world.
And they work on an emotional and irrational level more. Right?
That's right.
Not that they're not
That's
rational.
right. And so, you know, if I was in the driver's seat of a bill like this, I'd actually say it's hate speech to call people racist, because that is the modern version of a heretic. It's one of the worst things you can call someone, and it actually destroys people's lives. But
It's
they're
hate
actually
speech to
not.
call somebody a Nazi, which is at the crux of the Moira deeming John Bazzuto
Exactly.
case, which we'll be talking about
Exactly.
later.
So
whether or not
isn't calling people Nazis, or that you've got white privilege, or that, you know, that Western civilization is racist or heteronormative. These are all things that could easily qualify as hate speech, because they are status attacks. They're undermining from the left, but they couch it in this as a pseudo-intellectual critique, and that's the way they navigate that, to set it up for conservatives to fail and fall afoul of these, but then give themselves exemptions. Well, no, that's just a critique. That's a Marxist critique, you know, at the end of the day. But Marxism is undermining, so they move the goalposts for themselves, unfortunately.
Okay, here's what the laws actually say. And again, this is typical of laws similar around every state in Australia. Okay, but these Queensland laws say, under section 124(1), a person must not, because of the age, gender identity, impairment, race, religion, sex characteristics, or sexual orientation of another person or a group of persons, engage in a public act that a reasonable person, the reasonable person test, no doubt, a reasonable person would consider hateful towards, reviling, seriously contemptuous of, or seriously ridiculing the other person or members of the group. This is scary, thought police, totalitarian stuff. Scott PELTO, you've been a copper. How do you decide who's a reasonable person and who isn't?
Well,
or what a reasonable person thinks, I should say.
There's actually a lot of legislation about a lot of case law about what a reasonable person is. Damiann, I would say, again, coming back to the fundamentals, the role of government and bureaucratic government must be limited, and this and all the measures we're discussing are an expansion of that role. When the state becomes more involved and spreads its control, you move toward totalitarianism. And like Rob says, a lot of this is, you know, deceptively veiled, you know, with concepts that any reasonable person would agree with.
Yeah.
But these aren't issues in society today, not significant issues. Everything's an issue in pockets, but these are not massive social problems in 2024. What they are is a concerted movement of bureaucratic government in a direction to more control.
Yeah,
you know,
it's just
without
let
any
us
doubt.
decide all these human things. It would have been normal human interactions that you would have sorted out amongst yourselves like grown-ups. We're going to be mummy and daddy, and we're going to come in and say, stop fighting, children, and here are the laws that you have to follow. Section 124B says, a public act includes any form of communication, including speaking, writing, displaying notices, playing of recorded material, broadcasting and communicating through social media and other electronic methods to the public, and any conduct, including actions and gestures, and wearing or displaying of clothing, so even a t-shirt, if you're wearing an inappropriate t-shirt, you're in trouble, signs, flags, emblems, and insignia observable by the public. I mean, I feel like I'm reading something out of a communist manifesto. It's bloody insane.
And they know the response from the LNP will be, of course we agree with all that, but...
Well, the LNP's terrified. They stand up against sexism and against this, and you get accused of being, oh, you must be racist, you must be sexist, you must be a Nazi.
Yeah, so
Why doesn't that qualify as hate speech?
Yeah, like I say, they automatically agree, then say but, and then they've lost the argument, see, because they've agreed with what is essentially a false assumption. And then they want to argue the minutiae of the thing. So that's why, that's why it was introduced, in my view.
Right. So you think it's a political play to just create a wedge and divide and conquer. I love this bit here where they try and exclude things. 124C. It is lawful. It's okay, though, to do a public act done reasonably and in good faith, again, very waffly subjective stuff, for academic, artistic, scientific or research purposes, or for other purposes in the public interest, including public discussion or debate about and expositions of any act or matter. It is impossible to define hate speech, says Gabriel Moens, Professor Gabriel Moens of Queensland University Law School. He says any speech potentially constitutes hate speech. And under those definitions, what the heck are we supposed to do?
Well, we found a way to save
who's going to
the channel.
decide? YouTube's not going to take a chance, right? They're going to go, well, sorry, mate, we don't know, because these vague laws are just so vague. I mean, you might say that you're covered under 124C, but under 124B, maybe not. And so as YouTube, we're not going to let you go on because we just don't want any political content. Oh, and we've got those federal laws. We don't want those 5% fines on all of our revenue because we only made 4% profit last year, so that'll send us broke.
I'm just saying, we found a way to save your channel, Damiann. Just call it a satire of a centre-right show. It's all satire.
Thank you, Rob.
We're actually all
might say
GRAEME
that it's
members.
already that.
We're actually all friends with Adam Ban.
Like not to be.
All right, we'll be back in a
Yeah,
sec.
sorry.
We'll be back in a minute. With all the government crackdown on freedom of speech and digital IDs and marketing companies manipulating your information, you would be crazy not to have a virtual private network on your laptop and phone. In fact, all of your devices. I was once a bit afraid of how these things work, that they might, slow down my internet speed or be too complicated to set up. But private internet access is terrific. And when you buy from them, you're supporting the other side too, because they're one of our sponsors. So to help keep yourself safe from big government and big corporations with a VPN, get onto private internet access. We have done a fantastic deal just for other side viewers. You're going to get 83% off the usual price and 4 months free. That brings it down to just $2.68 a month, a half a cup of coffee. It's amazing. You just got to use the special access code that you can see on your screen right now. That is piavpn.com, piavpn.com/other side, and you'll get that discount if you do that, okay? It's super easy to download, super easy to get running. Literally just takes a few minutes, and it's always on. It didn't slow down my internet speed one bit. And a side benefit is that I can now watch Netflix using my Netflix account as if I'm in any country in the world, which opens up the whole global Netflix library to me. And best of all, by using PIA, you're supporting the other side in a very big way and helping us to keep on providing an alternative to the mainstream media focused on Aussie news. piavpn.com/other side. Get on it. You can catch us here on The Other Side every Friday night from 7 p.m. on YouTube. If you'd like to support us, the best way is to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It is absolutely free. Just hit the subscribe button and the little bell too, because that notifies you when we post anything. Also, if you're feeling generous, feel free to send us a super thanks donation. You can do that by clicking the little $ thanks icon under the video frame on YouTube. Thank you to everybody who has been doing that. We can do it a lot more, but thank you very much to those of you who have been contributing. It's fantastic. You can also follow us on X, Twitter, at The Other Side on X. It all helps. The biggest conservative-leaning think tank based in the state of Queensland is the Australian Institute of Progress, a long-time friend of this show. Many of you will know Graham Young, its founder and executive director, from his appearances on The Other Side. Well, Graham put together an interesting thought piece for the Sunshine State's Courier Mail newspaper about the fact that despite the massive confidence of the Liberal National Party in winning the state's next election next month, there does remain a not too insignificant chance that Labor could pull a rabbit out of the hat and hold on to power under its new leader, Stephen Miles, especially since he's become a bit of a fave on social media.
So Tom and I are out with the Bundaberg Holden Club, and what's this one, Tom?
This is a 1973 HQ GTS Premier. This is a perfect car to be in.
And the club members, they're pretty stoked to be getting 20% off their rego?
Absolutely, this is huge. 20% off rego and these special vehicles as well. Makes a big difference for households, for families, but of course for our car clubs as well.
How could you resist? Why don't you just tell us all about how stoked they are to get 20% off their rego, Tom? Huh? How about you tell us about that, mate? Now, Graham Young says this is far from an unlosable election for the LNP. He says the AIP's research shows that the campaign is a handicapped race stacked in Labor's favour because of a big bias in the rules around campaign financing. And this means unions and left-leaning non-government organisations supporting Labor will actually enable the Labor campaign to legally outspend the Liberal National Party by as much as $11 million, more than double. And this affects every state in Australia again because there's similar situations all around the country. These are the sorts of political tricks that the parties play with our elections, not just in Queensland, but all over Australia, and we've all got to be really aware of it. While the electoral laws limit the amount of money that political parties and other groups can spend every election, Graham Young says there's a loophole. The rort, he says, is found in a third category of, quote, registered third parties, which are limited in what they can spend, but not in the size of donations. There are currently 29 of these, and 16 of them are unions, plus 3 hard-left NGOs, including GetUp, who together have the potential to spend almost $19 million campaigning effectively for Labor. There are 4 centre and right NGOs registered, of which the AIP itself is one, and 4 industry groups. These are each limited to election expenditure of about $1 million, so the most they can spend is around $8 million. That's $11 million less than the left-wing groups. Now, Graham argues that this will not only mean the LNP will be outspent, but it's also got to gain a huge number of seats to win a majority. They hold 34 of the 92 seats in the Queensland Parliament only. So they need to get 13 more to get an outright majority. They might need more than 53% of the two-party preferred vote to get there. 5 seats are held by the Katters and the Independents, and One Nation may pick up some seats this election cycle too. But Graham says this creates a higher than usual chance of a minority government. And Queensland's Labor Premier Stephen Miles has been running a pretty good campaign, particularly with the young on social media. He's been turning his image around and distancing himself from his extremely unpopular predecessor, Anastasia Palaszczuk. Also, the Labor government has spent more than $2 billion with a B dollars, giving every household in Queensland $1,000 off its electricity bill. People like that. Money that the government doesn't really have to spend, by the way. Not that that's ever stopped a Labor government spending. Public transport is all but free in Queensland, with fares slashed to 50 cents. All of this is blatant vote buying, of course, but the electorate probably don't care. Especially the left-wing brainwashed under-30s who don't understand that they'll have to foot the bill later when they grow up, if that ever happens. Graham Young also notes in his article that there are then the inevitable negative personal attacks on Crisafulli and a recent scandal involving a company that he was remotely involved with that may have had some issues. David Crisafulli appears to have made a risky decision to play company doctor after he lost his Townsville seat in 2015, unsuccessfully attempting to rescue a small business. If he can't run a business, how can he run a state? Might be a potent attack line. Oh dear. Now all this has implications far beyond Queensland because so many other states and federally, the Liberal Party have been playing their usual small target strategy in Queensland, which means be mostly invisible. Don't come out too strong on any controversial issues. Just hopefully let the other team lose and we'll win by default. So the game is do not offend anyone. Be as bland as a Big Mac and you'll be popular by being unoffensive to anyone. It worked for McDonald's for a while, but this strategy has failed all across the country for the Liberals, which is why we've had non-Liberal governments except Tasmania. Now we have the Northern Territory. But that was the country Liberal Party and they ran a good strong campaign. But in Queensland it was thought that things were different. The LNP strategists felt that Labor was so unpopular that they couldn't possibly lose. So the best thing was just to make no waves and go with the small target thing. Well, we're coming to you from Queensland and our panellists today are good northern chaps. Guys, what do you think about the election campaign so far? We are 5 weeks out. Are people warming to Stephen Miles, do you think, Graham?
I don't know. I'm not really on social media, but I do see that I do a little bit and watch it. And I reckon they're outspending the LNP in that area probably 10, 15, 20 to 1.
Wow.
I mean, it's just huge. And a lot of it's seen, and you've got these third-party providers. In fact, I've actually set one up called Local Action Australia, and we're going to be involved mainly in the north, in the Labor seats, because the issues that aren't being addressed, that are the major ones up there, youth crime, health, education, and cost of living, and also the big sleeper is the coal royalties. It's got everyone a nice $1,000 off their power bill. But up north, it really resonates because the people up there aren't dummies. They can see they're not going to have a coal industry, and Queensland's second biggest fund source is going to disappear. And what are their kids going to be doing? Where are they going to be working? So this is a sleeper issue.
Yeah, well, let me just skip to Rob, because Rob, you are the youngest in this panel. You're the millennial here. How do you feel? I mean, do you think that people, millennial and younger, Gen Z, do you think that they get the fact that they're the ones ultimately that are going to be paying for these freebies that they're getting now off the electricity bill, off the public transport? Do they realise, do kids in Australia actually realise that they're the ones that pay for these Labor and Green initiatives further down the track when they're older?
Due to an incredibly inept education system, no, I don't think they do. I've talked many times, I think a lot of people don't see the causality between the policies that they're being offered and the hardships in the future. We've spoken a lot about the vastly under replacement rate birth rates. In the younger generations, younger than me, I hear that, relationships between men and women are shot, economic opportunities are shot, buying a house is very difficult. And so, like I said, it seems that the left, Labor are very happy to come out with a positive vision and almost enforce that. They're happy to use government power to rule. Like you said, Christopher has no personality. He's very flat and is just trying to, not do anything and win by default. I don't think that's a given. And I think all conservative parties, if they want to be relevant, need to come out with some positive vision. And Graham touched on a few great points there. People want to be safe. So coming out on crime would be a big one. People want economic opportunities flow down to successful relationships, and that flows down to buying a home and then having children. These are all very potent things that the younger generations are suffering with, and that's ripe for picking politically. Christopher
has come out quite strongly on crime because it's one issue that doesn't really have that woke element to it that he's so terrified of, right? This is the perennial problem, as Graham was saying, and you were saying earlier, Scott, too, that, they're just terrified. They let Labor, they let the left set the agenda, and then they walk right into it every time, and they play defensive. Oh no, we don't want to be seen as being blah, 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 right? Scott, it's almost as if when I hear Rob sort of outlining all the things that sort of are impacting young people, it all seems to fit together. It feels almost deliberate.
Well, there's no question that this particular election campaign by the LNP in Queensland is the most small target election strategy I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that you give the entire floor to the Labor Party. And everybody knows, I would say the mood in Queensland is clear. They're done with this Labor government and they want to get rid of them. And of course you then get someone like Stephen Miles, shamelessly giving away other people's money. This, 20%, it's not his money to say 20% of registration is not required to be paid.
No.
It's not his money to say we're going to reduce bus fares to 50 cents. For a fare. Everyone ought know, even the young people ought understand that it can't possibly cost 50 cents for someone to travel on the bus.
No.
There's a bigger cost, and to Rob's point, no chance do the young understand that this is impacting them and will cost them in the long run.
No, they'll still vote Green, they'll still vote Labor. They forget, they don't realise they're the ones paying the bill eventually further down the track. So why would any government be incentivised to do anything fiscally responsible? Just spend all the money and get re-elected?
People like us, Damiann, are saying, really, for your own sake, please, it's they're taking money out of your pocket and your kids.
Your future.
Your
Yeah,
future.
Yeah, great.
Bigger point again. Once you get north of about Bundaberg, it's around about there, probably not even south of there, everybody up there is aware of the 50-cent fees that they're not getting. Right? No one in Cairns gets a 50-cent fee, or anywhere else in Queensland.
Is that right? I thought it was every regional city.
Well,
No.
maybe, but
I'll
they don't see it that way. And the big problem...
Well, it's not in the remote areas, right? There's no benefit, really.
The problem that Christopher's made is he agreed with all the stuff. So he's sending a message to his electors there that we'll go along with anything that Labor says for the city here, because we don't want to lose votes here, and we don't care about the North. Now, the Labor Party probably don't care that much about the North, but Christopher should be, because I believe Katter and One Nation are going to pick up seats.
Right. It's going to be a very interesting election to watch for the whole country, really, this one. I mean, it really is just, it will be telling as anything.
It comes down to power, I think, a lot of the time. You know, if the left attacks you, often the effects on people's lives do go beyond screeching, you know, and being called names. You know, people have real world effects. And so, you know, the whole conservative side of the nation really needs to shore up every avenue of power so that they can actually just have the fight and not be destroyed. You know, like why do people have their businesses affected? Why do people have social, you know, and institutional opportunities affected when the left screeches at them over a policy they don't like? You know, you need to look at this weakness of the whole system from top to bottom so that you can actually say, well, this is our values, this is our positive vision, this is what we want to fight for. And so, like you said, it seems like conservatives right across the board are just scared. Why are we so scared? And let's fix what we perceive to be that lack of power that they're scared of.
We might have the answer to that in our next segment this week, folks, because we're going to be looking at what happened in Victoria with the Moira Deeming and John Pizzuto case, which has started in the defamation trial, started down there this week. So we'll be coming back with that in just a second. And you can catch us here on The Other Side every Friday night from 7 p.m. on YouTube. If you'd like to support us, the best way is to support our sponsors, and one of them is public internet access. That's piavpn.com/otherside to get 83% off your internet security. Brings it down to less than $3 a month to totally protect yourself online. Less than 83%. Off your internet security. So just go to piavpn.com/otherside and do tell all your friends about the show as well. That's another great way to support us. They can catch up on the latest news and commentary of the week without the woke in just an hour by watching or listening to The Other Side every weekend. And subscribe to our channel on YouTube. It's free. Just hit the subscribe button and the little bell too, and that'll notify you when we post anything. You can also follow us on X, Twitter at The Other Side on X. It all helps. If ever there was an example of a political party shooting itself in the foot and creating its own crisis out of thin air, the case of how the Victorian Liberal Party handled the sacking of women's rights activist and MP Moira Deeming is such an example. What could have been handled with a simple explanation turned into a political nightmare for Victorian Liberal leader John Pizzuto that has gone on for more than a year and is now before the courts as the MP he sacked sues him for defamation. And while we, of course, can't comment on the case itself, and it's up to the court to decide if there was any defamation, it could spell the end of Pizzuto's career politically, just on the basis of bad handling of an important issue. Moira Deeming was a newly elected young female Liberal MP in the Victorian State Parliament. She's a women's rights campaigner and campaigns against transgender rights that might infringe on the rights of biological women. She spoke last year at a rally called Let Women Speak with a visiting British activist, Kelly J. Keane, also known as Posy Parker online. The former federal Liberal candidate, Catherine Deves, was also at that rally, and so was a left-wing Jewish feminist called Angie Jones. All was well until neo-Nazis gag-crashed the rally and started doing Nazi salutes. Deeming was first suspended from the party and then eventually sacked As we said, she's now suing John Pesutto for defamation over a press release that he put out implying that she was herself a neo-Nazi. That trial started this week and it'll go for about 3 weeks. So now we get to hear all the juicy stuff come out in court, like a recording of a meeting between Damiann and 4 of her fellow Liberal MPs before she was sacked. Damiann's lawyer is arguing in court that they had no intention of keeping her in the party and they were going to sack her no matter what she did, and that she was being gaslit and bullied in that meeting. So the recording is an important part of the evidence. The Australian newspaper got some actors in to reenact some of the meeting for its morning podcast, The Front, with Claire Harvey. I want to play you a bit of that, and then we'll get to our panel comment. But first of all, I want to play you some actual audio, which is clear enough to hear. This is Victorian Liberal leader John Pesutto himself. This is the actual recording of him in that meeting with Moira Damiann and 3 other MPs on March 19. This is happening as the story about the rally was breaking, but before it had really blown up around Moira.
So the Nazi protesters arrive, and whether you like it or not, when the media and everybody looking at it, for whether we like it or not, whether we dispute it vehemently or not, when the media see that, they see them attached to you, they see them attached to me, they see them attached to us. And now we've got a problem, a huge problem now, because people think, rightly or wrongly, that we walk in lockstep with Nazi protesters and Nazis. And I'm getting clobbered, not just on social media, I'm getting messages from people now, and that will build. This is not going away. This is actually going to, I think, intensify as a story.
Now that is some of the weirdest stuff I have ever heard, and I've got a background in crisis communications and I've been in my share of crisis meetings. To say that he would be associated with Nazis because Moira went to a rally where some Nazis showed up is just utter nonsense. And it shows, in my humble opinion, that Pesutto's political judgment is just woeful. Any thoughts on hearing that, Graeme?
I feel like giving him a Nazi salute.
We're not
allowed to do it.
It's illegal.
Isn't that amazing?
It's illegal.
Look, the bit of background to this, it's not about the Nazis at all. Moira was a teacher, and she was particularly offended by the fact of the safe school stuff that they had to teach in Victoria. Yes. And there was one of the reasons she left teaching. And
the Safe Schools program is a pro-LGBTQI plus program that really drove some unscientific stuff about gender.
Yeah, I think they were teaching 8-year-olds it's okay to change your gender, right? And it's, most of it say this is bloody rubbish. But now, Damiann was talking about this at the actual thing where the Nazis, supposed Nazis walked in. Oh, come through, guys. They're probably off-duty coppers. Anyway, it succeeded because it certainly blew it up. But a bit of background. My wife said I'm not allowed to say that the LNP's been taken over by the gay staffers. She said, don't say that. So I'm not saying that because I don't think that's the case. But there's certainly a very big influence from these people in Victoria and in Queensland as well. These people are economically conservative, but they are socially progressive. And one of their big issues, I am told, it's a bit of inside information in Victoria, is this trans stuff. And at the base of it, this is what it's about.
Well, let me just comment on that because not all gay people are left-wing. No. So what's really going on is left-wing infiltration of the Liberal Party, if that, or not infiltration, but left-wing occupation of the bureaucracy.
Well, it's the staffer class, but they have got this view, and it's a very big issue for them, and they see that. They think that the Liberal Party position, which is in support of it, is in the mainstream of the LNP membership, which it's bloody not. Moira Damiann's right on the mark here. So I've been told that this is what it's really about. So
there's a disconnect between Moira Damiann, who represents what most people who are members of the Liberal Party in Victoria would think, and then you've got these staffers inside the government, the opposition rather, inside the opposition and government roles, or inside the party and party roles.
That's right.
Who are left-wing, who are pushing this agenda because they sympathise with their LGBTQI as opposed to just
on that issue.
Yeah, right.
And they see Moira as the devil. right?
Yeah.
So that's what it's... How else do you explain that there's probably going to be $2 million spent, right? Moira's obviously got someone funding her, and someone's funding Prosciutto, and it's all, there's going to be $2 million blown away in the wind. For what purpose? There's got to be something underlying, and it's not about the Nazi salutes and what have you. It's really this core issue. This is an existential fight going on, and I think the people, the members of the Liberal Party down there, better start thinking about getting rid of the 5 that were bullying Moira, because there's no place for those people in a conservative political party.
No. Well, before we get the other guys' thoughts, let's have a little listen to some of the 5. We're going to go with the audio of the reenactment that the Australian newspaper did for its podcast, its morning podcast. So we'll roll the first bit of this meeting reenactment from the Australian. Let's hear it now.
During the meeting, Damiann tells Pizzuto she had no idea the Nazis were attending.
The first time I saw them doing a Nazi salute was when they were being ushered by the police, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, there are Nazis here, that's terrible, but at least the police are taking them away. That's it. Very obviously, I'm not a Nazi, and I don't support Nazis.
Another MP, Deputy Liberal leader David Southwick, says,
do you want to be part of a team? This team? The actions of every individual reflect on our team. And as a Jew, in terms of what happened on those steps and the people that you associate with in that video afterwards is highly offensive. And I respect that you're able to have your views.
Damiann replies,
but honestly, what views do you think I have legitimately that are so terrible? Like, do you actually think that I'm some kind of secret Nazi?
The issues that I have are more about the group that you associate with, that have associations and have been associated with known Nazis.
Okay, Rob McMULLAN, this is getting a little bit silly, don't you think? And we've reached a point where it's not, what you think, it's what the person that you're standing next to's friend who's over there, or who might be loosely associated with these, or these people that showed up at this rally you went to. You got to worry about what all they think as well before you can.
What it stood out to me is the absolute asymmetry of resources being spent. For the sake of some goons in some balaclavas made in China and a cheaply printed sign, they've forced this huge expenditure from the Liberal Party and more redeeming, like a couple of years legal fees. What I'm saying is
this is a win for the neo-Nazis of Victoria.
They've given them incredible power. For the sake of this minute amount of effort on that day, look at the fallout.
Well, this speaks to how absolutely piss weak the Liberal Party are. Doesn't it?
The Labor Party did one, but they weren't bloody Nazis. There were 10 guys come in with masks on, black shirts, whatever. The coppers knew them because they waved them through. They're probably off-duty coppers.
You can't say that.
Well, I don't have any evidence of that. But
as an ex-copper, do you take offence at this, mate?
A little bit, but not entirely. But let me say, Damiann, let me say that it's unfathomable and ludicrous. Like Blind Freddy could see that Moira Damiann is not associated with a neo-Nazi.
Exactly.
I've heard her enough to understand that she shares no philosophy with Nazis, and clearly the organised attendance of that group of people at that rally was for no reason other than to diminish the social standing of the rally and Moira Damiann. So the ludicrous part is that the Liberals would somehow turn this into something.
Yeah, well, it's just shooting themselves in the head. And so, in fact, I think there was, where is it? Somebody actually said that. Victorian Liberal leader, this is in the Australian this week, Victorian Liberal leader John Pizzuto was warned by a party veteran and ally that his move to expel Moira Damiann was tantamount to, quote, shooting ourselves in the head.
Yeah, well,
according to minutes of a March 27 party room meeting that were leaked to the Australian.
Oh, but you couldn't make it up, could you?
Like Graham says,
so they've given incredible power to any group of 10 blokes in black t-shirts.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. Another senior Liberal told Pizzuto that the effect of the expulsion motion would be to label Ms Damiann as a Nazi, which was like calling someone a murderer, a rapist or a pedophile. While a third said that he believed the behaviour of Mr Pizzuto and Ms Damiann had been absolutely appalling. Wow. Okay, this has got to be the end of Pizzuto, hasn't it, Graham?
Misinformation laws now?
Probably has. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, seriously, how could Pizzuto lead any political party? I mean, what a clown.
Yeah, it is
just a clown.
Like Graham says, it doesn't make sense, and I've long said when things don't make sense, when they just don't add up, you've got to look behind them and go, what's the real reason for this? Now, I don't know the real reason, but I'll bet London to a brick there's a reason.
Do you think so? Because I just think it's incompetence.
No, it's so insane that they would do this to themselves. There's got to be something else. No.
Okay, so you reckon it's the safe schools thing? You reckon it's the agenda of the radical far left, LGBTQI plus
got a bit of
involvement?
Yeah,
right?
Got a bit of inside goss, so that it is.
Okay.
It's that issue of the trans stuff. I mean, you've got the gay staffers, probably all wonderful people. On this issue, they have been blinded by.
Well, let's just be clear. They're radical leftist gay. They're not. There are plenty of conservative gays out there that would be appalled by this.
Oh no, they're economically conservative. It's only on the social issue. So so they're they're ixy-twixy, a bit AC/DC on this stuff, I suppose. They're putting a bit of light humour into it.
Yes, I get that.
Yeah. So that's what it is, and this is a real existential threat for them. The party have got to address this. You can't have a takeover. You can't have a small group who are influencing the politicians, who are weak by definition, utterly weak, I should say, sharp and set down.
Well, I've never heard anything like that soundbite we played from Pizzuto. That was the most ridiculous, pathetic. But I guess, as you say,
reading a script.
I mean, their job is to represent their constituents, and clearly they're not doing that. They are clearly representing themselves or other groups, but they're not representing their constituents.
I mean, if they're too scared to actually, fight for the other side of the debate, then the people don't have representation. That's the thing is, you need to, conservatives need to be confident, strong enough to grow a bit of a spine and say, well, this is the other side of the issue that people want represented. Have the fight, have the social fight, and then with that conflict, you'll find a resolution where it's like, okay, well, these are the different arenas that people want different things. Reciprocity, as we've talked about a lot of the time, but you're not going to get a reciprocal resolution if the people that are representing the other side of the debate aren't doing that, and they're too scared to do it, and they run for cover every time someone prints out an offensive sign and stands next to a Liberal MP.
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
I'll just lastly say our side, the Conservative side, they're supposed to fight for freedom, and that's how we started this particular segment. And doing that requires bravery. Freedom is not easy, and you've got to be brave, and I don't see it.
And
they've got to fight.
We're not being represented by the current Liberal Party, probably.
They've got to fight. I don't care what they fight about. Just start fighting, guys. I mean, if you fight, then the other side won't keep doing everything that they want to do.
But not only don't they fight, they let the Labor and the Greens and the left constantly set the parameters. They set the fighting ring, the gymnasium, everything's set up. Now come into our territory and try and fight us and win. No wonder the Liberals are gutless and scared. They need to move the whole game and start bringing up issues that matter to people and start representing the other half of Australia that they're supposed to represent, that are actually out there desperate, I believe, desperate for representation and some leadership and some strength.
Well, we're free people, Damiann. We're supposed to be free people.
Yep. On that note, guys, we might wrap it up. If you don't have any final comments, but I just want to say thank you very much for coming on. We've talked about some really important topics this week on the show. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Our three wise men, and we would like to get you back to do this probably every 4 to 6 weeks. We'll do an episode like this and have three wise gentlemen in the room. Our millennial Rob McMULLAN, our Generation X Scott PELTO, and our baby boomer extraordinaire, Mr. Graham Haycroft. And that's all we have time for this week on The Other Side. We will be taking a break next week, so there won't be any show next Friday night, but then we will be back the Friday after that on October the 4th. So our spring break next week for 1 week, and then we're back Friday, October the 4th with a new show, but we will be putting out content every single night, all the clips and segments from this week's show and from a few good shows in the past as well for you over the next 2 weeks. So keep watching, stay tuned, and stick with us 7 o'clock every night on YouTube. We load up some content for you, so please do support us. Take care, have a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you Friday, October 4.